Back at Moore Mafia with Magic Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Hello.
This time we got the R1. So we had an ECU Flash done, but it was for a pipe different than the one I've got. So it's pretty close, but also if you watch the video on de-restricting, we did it in A mode, and I did not even think to ask to get it in my preferred mode of B mode. So we're going to reflash that. I figured if we're going to be here doing that anyway, let's just go ahead and tune it and dial it in and see how much power we can squeeze out of this bad boy. So only mods so far: the ECU Flash, BMC street filter, crash protection. Does have a Hot Bodies decat link pipe. So we've got stock headers, which are titanium and nice, not a lot to be gained there, and the stock muffler, which is wide open and unrestricted. So it sounds stupid loud. I'm guessing on this dyno, if you remember, we were on Opie's dyno, we got around 171, but he told me ahead of time, he's like, it's gonna read low. Don't worry about the number. So I'm expecting we'll be somewhere in the 180 vicinity here by the time we're done. So we'll see. Right now Mike's pulling out the ECU to start with the Flash, and then we're gonna go and get into the tuning and wrap up at the end. So now what we're going to do is we are going to run it in A mode, which is the unrestricted. And that's going to show us on the chart exactly what those throttle plate restrictions are doing, how much of a difference they're going to make. Then we'll get into the actual tuning. Those are our preliminary runs. We have not gotten to the actual tuning yet. We're going to have to tune out some areas here where it's a little lean down there, it's a little rich there. You can see the dip in the power that corresponds to those lean areas and that rich spot. So we're going to clean that up, play around with some more tuning and timing, see if we can get enough there. But that's the difference of the ECU restrictions. That was the difference between A mode and B mode. Was in the stock bike, both modes were shutting down the throttle, secondary butterflies at 12,000, so the bike was making less power and pulling less hard. by keeping them wide open all the way to redline, you can see the big jump in performance in that whole gap. So between 12 and 14,000, we got a good jump in power. And also our torque held on longer. So that's where we're at now. We're going to pull the ECU. Mike's going to work some more of his magic and see what other changes can be made. And we'll see if we can bust over 180 at the wheel on a largely stock bike. I mean, keep in mind, these are stock headers. All I've done is change out the air filter and the whatchamacallit, the decap link pipe. I'm using stock headers and stock muffler, and we're already brushing it almost 180 there. So we'll be over that by the time we're done, and we're going to see some gains in this area as well. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute. All right. So what we're doing now is he's gone through, and we showed you before what the differences were on the poles on the power. So he has now gone through into B mode. Left the softer throttle position control on the lower end, so the around town. The reason why most people use B mode is because of the smoothness, but everything up top from 70% up, he's removed all the restrictions. And as you saw, peak power only may have gone up 8 or 9 horsepower, but the main difference was between 12 and 14, and there it was a 21 horsepower difference. So he's flashing this to the ECU. Go throw the ECU back in the bike. We're going to do some more polls. He's going to gather more data on fueling and things like that. And then we're going to go in and we're going to start to clean up these dips and ups and downs and all that stuff. And we're going to dial in the fueling perfect. And that's where we're going to start seeing some action, some gains on top of getting the restrictions. So there's 2 ways of getting gains. Get rid of the inherent restrictions where the ECU was telling the bike to, hey, shut down the party at 12,000. We got rid of that. Now we're going to go in and make sure it's getting the fuel that it wants and needs to make the most power everywhere. So we'll get smoothness, we'll get fuel economy, we'll get the max power, the motor will run cool because it won't be running lean in spots, and it won't be overly rich in other areas. So it'll be this will be good. So we'll be back in a few minutes after we do this flash, and then we're going to start doing some more polls. there's our baseline run. That was in B mode, power mode 2, to make sure that the restrictions that he just lifted are in fact working. They are, else it would have gone down there. So now what we're going to go in is he's going to go in and start looking at the readings and the measurements. He's going to start changing the fuel amount. And we're going to fill in some of these lean and rich spots. This is where Magic Mike does his magic. But we're hitting 180 without any fueling changes so far, so I'm curious to see what we get. We may only pick up 1 or 2 up top, but there's some dips in the chart for sure. Fill in those holes. Good to go. All right, let him do his thing. Pretty bike. Alright, make some fueling changes. I'm going to see how they work out.
where the velocity stacks move.
Oh, that's what that is right there.
That's where the velocity stacks move. So I changed where they move to try to smooth it out as much as possible, so it's not as noticed.
Yeah, yeah.
So I changed them up, and then I had to figure out why.
So, as they say, a little lean is mean.
You don't want to be too lean and be mean to the motor, but
well yeah.
but it's going to tell you where it wants to make peak
right.
power.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, a dyno's not the end all be all, but it shows you when you make changes, does it like it or does it not like it?
Sure.
And
So we went in the one direction, it lost 2 horsepower, so we just go back the other direction.
Go back the other direction, but I'll probably only go halfway.
Yeah.
And that way I'm still safe and I'm not taking a chance of hurting anything, but I still get my performance.
Yeah.
So.
All right, cool. Have we done anything with ignition on this?
I have not changed it yet, no.
Okay.
But I have it all dialed in before I see.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because when you alter ignition timing, that'll change AFR.
Sure.
So I want to make sure my AFR is where I want it before I move that around too much.
Okay. Very cool. You want to pull the ECU?
If you'd like, sure.
What's that?
That's fine.
All right, we'll be back. There he is.
What's happening? How's it running?
It makes every bit of power that one with a slip-on does. So
Yeah.
There ain't no point
Yeah.
now.
I'm just finishing up tuning and
Getting him smoothed out and dialed in?
yeah, got my B mode set up like the A mode, so I can have the crazy top end power without
Yeah, but it's
touching
still-
the throttle and slamming into the car in front of
Still
me.
that lazy kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
The blue is pretty on these things. I love that color.
They're excellent looking bikes. Like
Yeah.
Yamaha's livery and
Headlights and shit
they
are
are
awesome.
they are.
Did you painted this or that's the way it came?
It came, all I did was just threw the number on the
matches
front.
the tail.
Oh yeah, that's cool. The map.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I would just play with the fueling and then I guess we'll play with the timing and just see what we can get out of it, but Ryobi work, so we know fueling's good. Oh, two things. Don't let me forget to email me that run file so I can plot a chart on Software at Home when we're done. And then the other thing was next time you're running it, if you're going to make some more changes, I'm curious to see how much my stock Speedo is off. I'm always curious about, you know, I get in these arguments with idiots on the internet about, yeah, my stock GSX-R 600 does 175. It's like, shut up, dude. Just stop.
I know a bone stock bike, just completely stock, nothing changed, is normally 7 to 10% reading high.
Yeah.
With nothing changed. Then now the new bikes
don't get thrown off.
Don't get thrown off by sprockets, but they're still not dead on.
And trying to explain to someone who's like, you know, yeah, my R6, I've got a power commander and a slip-on, and I can hang with R1s and boosters all day. And it's like, dude, just shut up. And try to explain to them how Speedo acts.
From 30 to 50 in first gear, maybe, because he's fighting keeping the wheel on the ground.
Exactly.
No, you're not.
Yeah, when it comes to top speed runs, 600s just do not have the horsepower to push to the wind. It's like you think about like an Isle of Man TT 600 Super Sport. They're struggling to break an honest GPS verified 170. I'm like,
go to Bonneville and watch some of the fastest 600s in the world, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're just not. Standing Mile, go to Loring, Maine, and watch them, and they're not running the numbers that, you know, this guy.
Yeah, unless you turbo, I mean, you do a lot of work to it, but not on a stock motor.
I've been dying to build a 300 plus horse turbocharged 600 for a long time. Turbo bikes are my specialty, and I've been dying to build one, like really bad. I started, had all the electronics and harness and everything done, and then I lost interest, lost time, and I need to go back and visit that.
So what are all these? Oh,
These are ignition timing.
Oh, gotcha.
So we're gonna go in, and we are gonna put a degree in it.
All right. I know this is your secret sauce, so I'll focus elsewhere.
Yeah, it's not a secret to anybody that knows what they're doing.
I know Chris is always like,
Hey, anybody that can figure it.
Yeah, I guess
don't get me wrong. It's taken me 20 years worth of tuning motorcycles to be able to look at a graph and know what I'm looking at and know what changes need to be made.
he always seems secretive about that part, so I figure, all right, we'll respect that.
So another thing, like we don't lock the ECU. When we flash it, we don't lock it.
So technically, someone with Woolwich can pull that out. Yeah.
So it's like my opinion, your ECU is yours. It's not mine.
Yeah.
You paid me to do you a service, so.
Yeah, some tuners are funny like that. Like,
there's a lot of tuners that they lock them. Period. It's locked.
They're like, well, that's my map. I built that, and it's like, well, I did pay you $400 for it.
So they call it intellectual property, and I'm like, well, like, trust me, I don't want somebody copying my map and selling it, you know, and all that. But at the end of the day, you as my customer paid me for a service. I performed that service, and that's your ECU.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on the fence because I've got friends that are tuners, and some are more of your line of thought, and others are like, well, that's my work. If you're giving it away for free, then I'm not selling. And it's like, yeah, it's, you know. So.
And I do understand it. I do understand it. Me personally.
Yeah, maps that I make, like if I go in and I'm unrestricting a Triumph, and I know, okay, it runs lean in this area, so we're going to add 10% a fuel here. We're going to add in the ignition. I've made maps based off of what I knew about that motor and what I saw on the dyno, and I'll share that with people, but I don't sell it.
Right.
It's like, all right,
and that's.
If you got an Android phone and you want to flash this yourself, here you go.
Yeah. So my standalone customers, I'm a little bit more, I wouldn't say secretive, but I'm not as open with that simply because when you're setting up a standalone, how the motor's built, all that can change your crank reference numbers and everything so much that I don't want somebody to take my map, have a similar setup bike, put it in there, blow it up, simply because the ignition timing value that they're running, they think they're running 34 degrees a time, but their crank reference number has not been set for their bike.
Right.
It's 38 degrees of timing, and they heard it, and then they think it's my fault, and I'm like, well, that's why those are not just, they're not plug and play.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, when it's stock bikes with slip-ons and things.
correct,
it's
correct.
Like,
You know, a bike this has the same ECU. It's all freshly manufactured. Like, it's gonna be good. And we don't even. I personally don't like taking. As bikes age, your fuel pump starts losing pressure. Your injectors may be dirt. So, you know, brand new bikes, it's easy to take a tune that I've done on one, and it will work excellent on another bike set up the same. As a bike ages, that interchangeability starts to go less and less, you know, and where they're located in the country and all that. So being making sure you're asking the right questions when you're tuning stuff, you know, makes a big difference. You definitely got to ask the right questions.
Cool.
You get a lot of loaded questions as a tuner. Guys run up to you at the track and want to ask you a question and think you just have this magic answer, and it's like, well, I need to ask you about 5 to 10 more questions so I can get all the information to give you an idea of what actually is the problem.
Yeah, it's amazing what the questions they ask. So on one of the R1 forums, I saw someone's like, my brake light works, but my turn signals don't. What's the problem? That's like saying my head hurts. Yeah. What's the problem? Well, do you have a brain tumor, sinus headache? Did your friend hit you in the head with a hammer? Like, there could be a lot of different causes.
All the loaded questions.
It's like, it's a really wide range of...
There are so many things that can be wrong. Of course, moving from Colorado down to here, I have a lot of my customers that still reach out to me on a regular basis, and they'll ask questions. I'm like, well, I need your bike in front of me for me to, you know, or they send me little videos. You see that? Did you hear that? I'm like, I could not hear it in the video. I'm not 100% sure. You know, I want to help you, but sometimes I physically need to put my hands on it to make it work.
Yeah, well, same thing going to the doctor. They want to go to telemedicine and stuff. It's like, well, you know.
Well, I mean,
if my arm's clearly broken and it's bent at the wrong angle, yeah, you could probably figure that out pretty quick.
You can definitely figure that out.
If it's like, you know, I've got leukemia or something, yeah, you might want to have me in the office and, you know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we get bikes in all the time that, you know, people they've self-diagnosed it. I'm like, well, if you've diagnosed it, then...
It's like when I go to the doctor.
You know, and then you tell them that something else, then they will argue with you that, no. I read it on a forum, and I'm like, forums are great. Don't get me wrong. They're great places to chat and everything, but don't take every single thing that's in a forum 100% credibility.
Well, it's the same.
Not everything.
It's the same thing with doctors, and you're giving them stuff, and you're like, well, I read on WebMD, and my doctor just starts rolling his eyes at me. He's like, would you shut the fuck up?
Chris always, you know, tells, you know, one of his sayings is that not everybody with a stethoscope is a doctor, and that 100% is the truth.
Yeah. There's a such thing as too much information.
Correct.
And you see it in this stuff. You see it with doctors. You see it with politics. I mean, some things it's like, you know what, we're better off just not knowing and just.
Yes. Yep.
You get too much information. You go in and you end up making things worse.
I understand the manufacturers of the software, of course, wanting to sell their product to as many people as possible.
Sure.
But you would not believe how many phone calls. Well, hey man, I bought the software. I'm trying to flash my bike, but what does this do? What does that do? And I'm like, if you can't open the file and look at a folder and know exactly what you're changing, do yourself a favor. Don't change it.
Yeah.
Leave it alone, because if you change it, it can be a drastic difference. I mean, when I start playing with traction control settings, we're making very minute adjustments until we see how much does that change something. And so, but if you are not in the field or you don't do it, guess what? You might make a drastic change, and it could either get you hurt or it could damage your bike or something like that. So, you know, I always tell people
something as simple as a typo. You accidentally type in and you had 60 degrees of timing advance. It's like, what do you think that's going to do?
As an example, you go in and you've got your volumetric efficiency number in your fuel table. Well, now you've got a fuel trim. Well, then you've got the value trim. So those are three totally different things. And so if I was to just copy this and paste this to another table for, say, a different mode or something, it's not going to be correct.
Yeah.
Because I need the values to be the same, not the trim, because the trim might be that other table, 15%, 10% might not be the same. And so that's making sure that you're not just copying that. It could be it's not all just plug and play.
So you're saying you actually have to know stuff to do what you do, Mike?
Hey, and I make mistakes too, trust me, I make mistakes too.
There's a reason why you pay good money for this stuff, right?
Correct. There's a lot of time and effort into developing and coming up with, you know, and testing it. That's the thing.
Sure.
You've got to be able to test what you're doing. If you don't test it and you just assume, well, I added timing, it's going to be better. You don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Because the other bike liked it doesn't mean this one is.
yeah, I've never played with Woolwich, and luckily, you know, the tuners that I've used in the past have been friends of mine, so they you know, well, you're letting me in the dyno room here too, but, you know, like Huey and Charles would take the time to actually, like, there's been times where Huey's like, here's what we're doing, here's why, and I've actually gotten to the point where I can go in and use the Tuning Link software, and I can tune a bike with a power commander. I can go in with Tune ECU, and I could tune a bike completely by myself if I had access to the dyno. But I wouldn't, you know, with this Woolwich stuff, I don't know anything about that, those extra
The
tables.
bikes are just getting more and more complicated.
Yeah.
Way more complicated. There's so much going on. That BMW ECU, there is so much going on inside of it. It's crazy. I mean, just timing tables alone. That BMW, I want to say there was like 13 or 15 timing tables. Great, like
Leave it to the Germans.
over-engineered. I may say it's over-engineered. I'm sure they don't think so, but
No, they're just being German.
it's like, is it a nice bike? Absolutely. Is it fast? I was amazed how much power I got out of that thing.
Yeah. What'd you get out of it?
197, I think, on pump gas, with just a flash and it had a full Acura, which, I mean, that's a $3,000 exhaust on that bike,
Yeah.
but I mean, 197 horsepower of a bone stock. I didn't ride it to see what it felt like,
Right.
but holy moly! I mean, I was impressed. I'm not a BMW lover, but guess what? I was impressed for sure. As I'm tuning it, the numbers just keep going up. I'm like, ooh, okay, all right.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal,
Just when you
phenomenal bike.
think you hit the limit, and then it goes up 2 more. You're like, okay, well, like that. I guess let's keep going down that road.
All
Alright.
right. Oh, earplugs in. Gonna make some more noise. This is for the ram air, right?
For ram air, yeah.
Sure.
You'd be surprised how much air that thing moves.
It actually does move
There's
a lot.
a reason I have a jacket on, because
Right.
it'll freeze me out.
Yeah, after you do your runs, if you could get it to 100 on the Speedo, I want to see what that says and see how accurate we are.
Actually, this won't reach speed.
Oh, shit, that's right.
Based off the front tire.
Ah, yeah, that's right. Never mind. Oh, yeah. a lot more. All right, that's the thing. It's trial and error. So added a little bit of ignition advance, and the power went down a little bit. So we're going to go back, and then we should be fine. So do you think that's because of, you think in that first map that Chris had from the guy with the Yosh that this was based on, did it already have ignition advance?
Oh, I already had it. Yes, I already had that. That's the ignition was already in there.
Gotcha.
I had already played with it on his bike to get no, but different exhausts will change that. I mean,
okay. All right. So we go back.
I go back.
We'll go back, and we'll be back at 180, 181, somewhere right in that range, 180 and change.
Yep.
And at that point, I mean, yeah, we're all competitive and have egos. We want to see a big number, but
I wouldn't think that would make a difference. 1 degree of ignition time.
Yeah.
It's clearly different. You can see it through the entire.
Definitely.
So basically, you can see starts making more than. So if you notice, it even makes this less pronounced.
Yeah.
Just simply because the bike's not pulling as hard as it would.
Okay.
So,
Now, at the end, we all want
you gotta try it. You
Yeah,
gotta
we
try
love
it.
to see
You don't
big
know
numbers,
unless
but-
you try it. That's the thing. Unless you change it, you don't know what.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, my thing is, you know, is the motor happy? Is it making as much power as it can? And the number is what it is, right?
That's right. That is correct.
So, yeah, it's nice to see the bigger number
Oh.
just for bragging rights. But
We get a lot of people that come here and they're like, "Oh, on so and so's dyno, it made X amount of power," and that's great. All dynos read different. All I care about is the percentage of change that I made.
Sure.
So if bike makes 100 horsepower and now it makes 107, I effectively made it 7%
Yeah.
better than what it was. That's what I care about is, did I make it better or did I make it smooth? Sometimes you take power out to make it smoother.
Sure.
That's
yeah, and the difference between dynos, like Opie's dyno says 171, yours says almost 181. If I took it to Brian Living Goods, it'd say 195. So it's
and whose is right, whose is wrong? Well, I'm not going to sit here and argue about that because I don't believe there's a difference.
well, the factory pro dyno guys are going to argue and say we're
They
all
are,
wrong,
yeah,
and theirs is right.
Correct.
Charles uses a factory pro dyno.
I have.
He gets good results. He really knows how to tune a motor, and I know that there's advantages to doing the stepped, holding it there for 5 seconds, really getting. He's got a 5-gas analyzer.
The
But the
5-gas analyzer, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he can really tell what's going on in the motor.
I 100% agree. A 5-gas analyzer.
But the number to me is always kind of meaning. I mean, I know that I walk out of there knowing it's tuned right, but I know that if I want to talk to somebody else, everybody else uses Dyno Jet, so I don't have apples to apples to compare.
A lot of my road race guys that I will tune their bike, I'll tune the bike on the dyno, and then I'll put a data logger on the bike. And we'll go to the track, and we'll do several sessions at the track. And I was actually pleasantly surprised when I started seeing data coming off of multiple riders' bikes that I tuned that we are really close to. I mean, the amount of changes that I have to make usually are so minute that it literally, if the temperature went up 10 degrees, it would change it enough. That, so that's actually been a pleasant surprise. But is there sometimes more things that you can do having live data in real world? Absolutely, but none of us are going to ride around with the data logger all the time. So.
No. I just need to know that it's good enough, it's happy, it's making what it should.
She's happy. You're going to have fun at the track, man, that's for sure.
Cool. All right. My camera's actually getting hot. I'm going to turn it off for a little bit. These GoPros do overheat, which is odd considering it's 41 degrees in here. It's basically a meat locker.